Welcome to BuildWise, the podcast where construction meets wisdom. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the construction industry. We're going to share insightful tips, dive into the latest trends. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just getting started in your journey in construction, you got to read the teleprompter, right? And some valuable insights. Let's build a smarter, wiser future together. Like and subscribe now, and stay tuned for a foundation of knowledge in every episode. I am your host, Dan O'Neill, and today we're going to be talking with Joey Azevedo. Did I say that right?
Yes, sir.
And he owns Meridian Air. And so we're going to chat a little bit about air. Not that we don't have a lot of hot air in here, but but anyways, so tell us a little bit about you and how Meridian Air got started and all that good stuff.
So we're transplants. So I have a partner I grew up with, Ryan Patterson, a close buddy of mine. We're both from Central Valley, California. We both were born and raised there. My father, two uncles, and my grandfather were all in the HVAC industry their whole lives, whether it would be union or owning their own business. My grandfather helped start some of the unions in the Central Valley way back. My father owned his own business, and both my uncles were union for years. So I've been drug along job site to job site on summer breaks since I was as young as I can remember, helping install ductwork and just doing the simple things, clean up, all the way to I installed my first condenser when I was really young, and I would kind of get set on stuff and left to do it. And we moved here just because we want to change a life. I have 3 young kids, so we started up here about 2 years ago and took off from there.
Very cool. So I was chatting with you a little bit before, and we had you were just kind of telling me some of the probably things to watch out for, in the industry, HVAC side. We've created the podcast to kind of have a dialogue about things that, have been bothering me in the industry and bothering trades in the industry, and trying to educate, to bring the level up a little bit. Sure. And hopefully a lot. But anyway, so that's what we're trying to do. So what is your number one pet peeve that you've been encountering lately?
So really false sales as far as what you need and if your equipment needs to be replaced or how it needs to be repaired, and also what is being charged to replace or install new equipment. So
yeah,
it's pretty dramatic.
What's a good example?
Well, I'll give you an example of us. So we go on quotes all the time for people that are conscious enough to get more than one quote, because that's a number one rule. You have to get 3, 4, 5 quotes to make sure that things are in line. You get one quote and it may be $25,000, and we come in and give quotes on systems like that all the time, and we're less than half. We might be.
Is that because you've got better vendors, or because you're just being more honest?
Just being more honest and not gouging. The reality is I've kind of done the math because I started catching on to it back in California. It was very similar. And not that there's not other companies like us, because there are. We're not the only guys that are honest and reasonable. But a lot of these bigger companies especially, they're operating at a 200 to 300% profit margin, sometimes more. We buy our equipment from the same supply houses. We pay nearly the same.
Yeah.
You get a volume discount, obviously, when you work that. But some of the connections I had back in California, I pay the same prices as the biggest companies in the valley, and I know what the systems cost. And just to be out there and forward about it, to go buy a system, buy all your equipment for a change out for $4,000, and then get the whole change out done in 5-6 hours and charge somebody $25,000, you can't justify that. I don't care what your insurance costs.
One of our biggest things for us as a general contractor is trying to evaluate all those bids you get and seeing, shooting holes in it. Trying to find where someone's not being fair. And everyone's got to make money, but it's gouging, price gouging, not being honest about it. All these different things. And I guess if you're known in the industry as the higher price guy, and they go with you, so be it. But I was telling you before, I had this instance just not too long ago where we had a brand new system. And they tried to tell us that, we jacked it all up before they fired it up, and tried to blame it on drywall dust and whatnot. And I was like, well, we were done with the drywall. You didn't start the system until long after we were done with the drywall.
Right.
And then tried to charge me $8,000 to get it beefed up. I sent one of our other techs out, and it was a couple $100 service call. He cleaned everything up. Everything's just working just fine. You know, and it's
simple fix.
stuff like that that I think we're trying to bring light to, and for the public to pay attention. And if you don't know, you can leave some comments below, and we will connect you with Joey or whoever you are looking for, and try to get the right answers. And don't just take the first guy that comes along and sounds right. And that kind of leads to what we were talking about a little bit. That what do you call it? You're talking about the 60 years of experience and who they're sending out, and tell about that.
Yeah, so again, with my version of what I think is false advertising is when companies tell you, we have 60 years plus experience, sometimes more in the Treasure Valley, and that may be the case. Maybe Grandpa started the company so many years back. He's passed and gone since, and grandson or son has taken over and all that. But the guy that's coming out to your house, he may have a year of experience or less. So that's 60 years of experience in total with the company. That's not necessarily being applied to the work that's being done on your home. You can have an apprentice that just came out of school or working for another company, or just went and bought his apprentice card. You can go down to the licensing department, spend about $100, get your apprentice license right there on the spot, and then you can be hired for an HVAC company. You may not know hardly anything about HVAC, and they're putting you on installs, and that's where you get mistakes and problems, and then it causes issues with your system down the road, if not right off the bat on a brand new, $1 million+ home. And it's just, it doesn't translate. So,
and how do you do that different than other people?
With us, I actually have the experience. So I've been doing this a long time. Like I said, my family's been doing HVAC for a very long time, and we keep it small. So we're a mom and pop company. I don't hire new people that are rookies. If we do, it's somebody that's should be shadowed by us all the time. We're there on the job site while everything's being installed. We're hands-on. When you call, you get a hold of us. When we show up for a repair, it's me that shows up or my partner. The repair is being done by me or my partner. But otherwise, you have to be really wary of who you're hiring and what they know. Because if you grow and get ahead of yourself, which a lot of these businesses do, they get into huge loans, huge amounts of debt, and now they need to produce a certain dollar amount, and that just gets pushed back onto you. And they're going to start hiring as much as they can, and they filter through. The turnover with some of these guys is crazy. They work for 3 different companies in 1 year because they're just not experienced enough yet.
Yeah.
So.
What would you say is your most egregious thing you've seen recently?
So I had a call the end of this last winter where a guy had a 9-year-old Linux system, good equipment. It was installed right when the house was built on a tract house. There was nothing wrong with it. He had a clogged filter to the extent that it was causing the system to overheat and shut off. They have safeties built into them, and if you don't have enough airflow, they'll shut down. Well, he had another company out that said your system needs to be replaced. It doesn't work anymore. And he luckily got a hold of us through somebody else, through a business group that I'm in, and we went out, and the guy had literally deliberately unplugged the pressure switch. So he kind of sabotaged it.
Oh, geez.
And then gave him a quote. And we went up there, plugged the pressure switch back in, pulled the filter, everything ran fine. His temperature rise was perfect. No cracked heat exchanger, no carbon monoxide, none of the stuff that the guy said, and replaced the filter, and he never had any more issues. I think we charged him $150.
It's funny, people, we did a lot of commercial construction, and, I get, owners calling and complaining like, oh, my air conditioner's leaking water, you guys did something. I'm like, and then, when you turn all this stuff over to them, you give, maintenance instructions and warranty stuff. And you go up there and you're like, dude, you haven't cleaned this filter since we turned this store over to you. And it's freezing up. And then, then it's, overflowing the pan. And, it's like, you got to maintain these things too.
Yeah. So simple maintenance is super critical. It will save you tons of money just to spend a little bit up front to have your system serviced once or twice a year. So the condenser gets cleaned, your refrigerant gets checked, and you get your filters changed. We suggest on average people change their filter once every 3 to 4 months. That can vary. If you have a 4-inch thicker filter and you live in the middle of town where there's not a lot of dust, you might be able to get away with twice a year. If you have a 1-inch filter and you live out in the country where there's a ton of dust and, because they're tilling and planting all the time, you could be changing your filter every month to 2 months. So it's all depends.
Well, and it's, filters unfortunately are out of sight, out of mind. However, with some of the new thermostats and different things, don't they have like little reminders
give
and
you a
things like
reminder,
that?
yeah.
And then do you guys offer like a pre-done maintenance program kind of thing where they can just they don't have to think about it. You just say, hey, it's
Absolutely.
time for your filter change.
Yeah, we put you on a schedule. We charge as we go, so it's per visit. We don't auto draft you. It's just when we come do the work, and then we send you your invoice, and we kind of base the frequency on where you're located, whether it's commercial, residential, what your use is. And we're reasonable. I mean,
Well, it's funny. I was guilty of that. I was noticing that my air conditioner wasn't working very well, and all of a sudden I went, "When was the last time I changed my filters?"
yeah, yeah,
and I went up and I looked down. I'm like, "Oh!" I go, "They're pretty dirty."
yeah.
And you've got filters. I want to remind you got like on mine. I've got them on my return airs, and you also have them inside your plenum too, right?
Yeah. So in most cases, you're going to have your return airs shouldn't be filtered. You never want a dual filter. So your return airs should be free, and obviously they're up in the ceiling. You have, some of these houses have 9 returns in the house. You're not going to have all different size filters and change them out, but your main one is going to be located at the furnace. So everything draws from those different areas, but it all goes through that main filter before it goes through the system.
Yeah, on mine we had. Well, maybe mine only does have the. No, I have multiple filters. I have multiple filters. It works good.
Yeah.
They get dirty.
Yeah, yeah. No, they're all drawing air. Yeah, it depends. If they have it plumbed in a certain way, you might need to have an individual filter on one of those returns if it comes in through the side instead of through the main return trunk. But
Yeah. It was a I have two satellite returns. But what do you think about, like, in a house in California? I had a big HEPA filter, big box HEPA filter put in, and I had a UV light put in,
yeah,
and it seemed to work pretty good. I mean, I guess there's no litmus test on if it really is working or not, but what do you think about those?
They work, but the maintenance on them is pretty intense as far as the HEPA filters, and they're not cheap. I like to go as maintenance free and as simple as you can on most of these things, because like you said, most people are not aware. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and it'll get neglected.
Yeah.
If somebody wants better indoor air quality, they make pretty modern air scrubbers that are basically a shrunken down model of what they use in hospitals, in a sense. One of them being Active Air by Dust Free, and then another brand, Remy Halo, are our 2 favorites. They're really cost effective. They plug in and they have 7 different technologies built into them, including the UV light, plus everything else that you could imagine to scrub your air and keep it clean. They actually
Where does that get installed at? Is it in the...
That gets installed in your supply air, so all your air is passing over that thing, and they actually produce a hydrogen peroxide gas in small amounts that basically any surface area that it makes contact with in your house, it kills bacteria, viruses, everything. So it'll create almost a sterile environment. That can be a good thing. Sometimes it can't. If you're older, have a lot of medical issues, and you're not outside a lot and be exposed to the environment, and your immune system can drop quite a bit. In those cases, I'm not a huge fan of them, because it'll get so sterile that you step outside and you catch the first thing that comes along. So it all depends. Filter wise, if you don't have any breathing issues or asthma or anything like that, you have a rating on your filters, and I like to put a filter in that's between 8 and 10. It's a MERV rating, and that allows you the best airflow in your system. Because what happens when you get a more expensive filter that it has finer filtration properties, it slows down the airflow, almost mimicking a dirty filter. So you have to change them more often if that's the case. Because if you restrict that airflow, that's when you can have icing up issues, overheating when you're running your furnace, and you put a lot of undue stress on your blower motor, which ups your amperage draw, and that's where a lot of your power consumption comes from, especially when you're running the furnace. So anytime you're moving air. But the big one I like to warn people about on the maintenance is the key reason why to have somebody come do a tune-up at least once a year is your refrigerant charge. So a lot of guys in the industry don't even know this, that have even been doing it longer than me, twice my age, but all systems leak refrigerant. Brand new. When it's brand new installed, the system leaks refrigerant. When you braze your copper joints with 15% silver solder, if you were to actually look at that under a fine microscope, there's micro fractures in that silver solder that actually leak refrigerant. Now we're talking very small amounts. Maybe you lose a pound over a period of 10 years, but they all leak. But some people's leak faster because they weren't brazed properly, and they'll burn their compressor out, and it's a very expensive repair. So the main thing is having somebody come out, because we check that refrigerant charge when we're there. So that leak won't be aggressive enough in most cases that if you're having it checked once every year, you'll catch it before it becomes an issue and destroys your equipment. So.
And you were mentioning something about the refrigerants and how some people are charging more for some upgrade on refrigerant and blah blah blah.
Yeah, so R22 was our past refrigerant. It worked amazing. It works at lower pressures. It's more efficient. Lower pressure means less heat, less wear and tear on your compressor. But the EPA didn't like it because of its effect on the ozone. It's more aggressive when they leak or get gassed out, or guys cut them and dump them, which you're not supposed to do. So they went to 410, which now they're already trying to work on phasing that out in certain areas. But R22 equipment, they don't produce anymore. So a sales tactic for guys when they come in is they'll see you have R22 equipment, it works fine. And I've heard lies as egregious as, this is illegal, now you can't have R22 equipment, you need to replace it. And they give them a quote for new equipment. There's nothing wrong with their equipment. R22 equipment is not illegal. I'd say most of the houses still have R22 equipment from a certain year back. It's just if you were to replace it now, you can't replace it with that equipment anymore. So new equipment has to be 410. They still produce R22 refrigerant. It can still be recharged and fixed if it has a leak. They can still be worked on and repaired. And they also make R22 alternatives as far as refrigerant. So R407C and a couple others that work great, and they're a fraction of the cost. R22 tends to be pretty expensive now, even at our cost. But it's also gotten egregious with charging. Guys will come out and charge, $100+ a pound for R22 when they're buying the tank for $700 to $900 for a 30-pound tank, right? So you do the math on that, and they're upselling it like crazy. But the reality is, if you can't afford that, you can go another route with another refrigerant that's designed to work with your R22 equipment. They won't even mention that. They'll just tell you need new equipment. It seems like they're not technicians anymore. It's just most of these companies, it's just all sales guys.
It's all sales, upsell. Mm-hmm. When you get there, sell them on a new furnace, that kind of thing.
And for as much as you can, because that's how they make their commissions or bonuses or whatever their pay structure is set up. So,
yeah. I remember a while back there was a furnace that there was a certain type and model, and I don't remember, but it was dangerous and it'd catch on fire. And I think they've weeded most of those out now. But when would you want to change out a furnace? Like what would be do you have like a checklist, like boom, 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 what, this needs to be replaced? Because there are things that do need to be replaced.
The main thing is just the maintenance, because you can replace parts here and there. So you treat it like an old car, right? You can have a car that has 150,000 miles on it, and the alternator goes out. You're not going to get rid of the car and get a new car. You replace the alternator, right?
Depends on who you are.
Yeah, it depends. But anybody that's reasonable and, doesn't like to blow their money and wants to get everything they can out of the car, you kind of ride it till the wheels fall off. And for me, it kind of applies the same with HVAC. If it's a small repair and the system's 20 years old, but it works great, do the small repair and keep it going. Now, if you blow your compressor or something like that and your system's 20+ years old and it's already had a lot of issues, it gets to a point where it's not really cost effective. You can't justify dumping $3,000 into a system that old to repair it. You might as well upgrade at that point and go with something new. But the reality is, all systems can be fixed almost to no end. I mean, even heat exchangers can be replaced. You get a cracked heat exchanger, which, by the way, if you have one, almost all brands have a 20-year heat exchanger warranty. So if your heat exchanger cracks at 15 years old, I've replaced them, and the part's free. As long as they still produce it, which in most cases they do, they'll have a bunch of back stock. But
how about like undersized units? Do you see a lot of that?
A little bit. There's kind of this hybrid deal going on. It was done with my home. We bought our home, so I didn't build it or do the system, and it's good install. But to gain efficiency but use cheaper equipment, they'll go with like a 13 SEER condenser. And on my house, it's about 3,000 square feet. It has a 3-ton condenser on a 5-ton coil, and you gain higher efficiency as far as your SEER rating going that route. But I've also seen a lot of custom spec houses in the outlying areas where they're building out on the hills, where they've undersized, especially the upstairs system. So they have 2 systems because the house is so big. and the system upstairs just doesn't get it done. It's too hot in summer. The winter is not an issue. It produces the heat. That's a little easier, but they're not getting the cooling they need. So, and the insulation.
All right, let's talk lingo. What's a SEER?
So a SEER is a seasonal energy efficiency rating, and it's basically how they rate how efficient your system runs as far as energy consumption, electrical consumption, based on the season of the year. So when they give you like a 13 SEER, that's the minimum SEER rating that it should operate at in the worst season for it to do so. Otherwise, it goes up from there. So a 13 SEER may get 15 SEER sometimes of the year.
So the higher the number, the better the energy.
The higher the number, the better. The higher the number, the more expensive the equipment gets. But that's another thing which I would actually like to set straight, because when companies up your SEER rating because you tell them you want more efficient equipment, and they say, okay, it's going to be another $3,000, it's not that much. To go from standard equipment to high efficiency, they're upselling and upcharging like you couldn't believe.
Is SEER an acronym for something?
Seasonal energy efficiency rating.
You said that already.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, and then on your
Well, you said it so like congruent, so smooth. I didn't catch that you were using the acronym, but that's cool.
Yeah.
And then, because I didn't know that actually, everyone kept slinging that word, and here I do this stuff all the time, and I'm just like, I trust my HVAC guys a lot and my subs, but and then explain BTU.
So BTUs is your British thermal units, and that's literally your heat output. So the conversion, you lose heat in all your furnaces, right? That's why you have an exhaust. So there you have your high efficiency furnaces and your standard efficiency. Standard efficiency is usually 80%, which means every dollar that you put into putting heat into that system, 80 cents is going into your house, 20 cents is getting wasted out of the roof, right?
Yeah.
Then they have high efficiencies, which are up in the 90s, 95, 96%.
Oh, that's pretty good.
And that means the same thing for your dollar. So you're putting 96 cents into your house and only 4 cents are going out the roof. And you can easily tell what system you have based on whether you have a metal exhaust or a PVC exhaust. If you have a PVC, you have a high efficiency system. They only need a plastic exhaust pipe because there's such little heat being put out of it that it's not.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's funny. I don't know why it's called British thermal unit. I mean, why not an AT? Why not an ATU, an American thermal unit?
Yeah, it's weird how stuff like that gets adapted. But
I guess that's why we haven't changed over. Well, and it's funny because we'll use that stuff, but we won't use like the metric system and things like that.
yeah, exactly.
But well, that's cool. What else?
The main thing I like to stress to people when I meet them, I don't care if people use me or not, even if we go in and give them a quote or do a repair or whatnot, we're very honest about telling them what's wrong and just treating people fair. If you're in the greater Treasure Valley, we don't charge you $250 just to show up. We don't charge you anything. We don't charge you to tell you what's wrong with your system. We charge you if we do work. So if we do a repair, then we charge you. And that's the way I feel it should be. It's proven to work. It's proven to be profitable. I can still operate my business and support my family, and I don't need to be greedy and gouge people to do that. And I take pride in people not having to take out loans to get a new HVAC system and go into massive debt, especially when they're on a fixed income.
Now, do you just do commercial or residential or both?
Residential, no, we're commercial? About a 50-50 split, yeah, which was kind of the same in California. When I first started here, it was a lot more residential than commercial, but we've started to do a little more commercial. So
nice. And what's one of your biggest jobs that you've done?
Oh, we've done, again, we're a small company, so I only have a few guys that work for me, running ductwork and doing installs and stuff. But we've done 60-unit apartment complexes. It's all just, given time.
You've been on a 48-unit for us too, didn't you?
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah. We've done a lot of spec houses, especially this last year. We've done a ton of spec houses. So from here up to McCall, we have a really wide range that we travel. So it's not like we're just right here. We do work all out and around hours away, depending on the job.
So if you, I guess taking your best spec home build setup and your worst one, what are some of the, like, what is your optimum contractor that, like, how when he calls you, how he sets things up, how you handle it, like, what is it that you would love to see that those jobs are the ones that you're like the most happy to bounce onto the job site?
You know, the main thing is them having the experience. So a lot of contractors, again, if this is again just from my understanding, when I moved here, I had to go take my journeyman's test. I had to prove my hours from California that I own my own business on. They made me jump through a bunch of hoops to get my license. Apparently, if you go a while back, they were allowing people to come in moving from out of state and just fill out an affidavit basically saying, hey, I had my contractor's license or whatever in this other state. And they let you just start up. Well, they had a bunch of guys with money, whether they were doctors or lawyers or just had the funds to do so. They said, hey, I decided I'm going to be a contractor and I'll just sub out to guys. Well, they had no idea what they were doing, but they were getting their licenses. And apparently that kind of became a mess. And this is, again, information that was fed to me by the licensing department when I moved here because I had been told that. And they said, no, that's changed. But they didn't go through and filter out all those guys. So they still exist. They still have their licenses. And you know when you're working for one of them because they have no idea what they're supposed to be doing in terms of their relationship with you doing the HVAC. There's certain things that they need to prep for us. We may need chases built to get ductwork and air up to upstairs or down into a basement or framing in our boxes or anything like that, the stuff that we don't do.
Yeah, and, it's funny, and I want to make a comment, too, that in Idaho, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, they're all licensed. They all have to take a test. General contractors don't. And we actually did a podcast on to regulate or not to regulate. And I thought coming to Idaho, I would really enjoy not being regulated as much as California was. I'm finding it's a real problem for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm dealing with a lot of people that they swing a hammer, they start a business.
Yeah.
And they're horrible to work with. Yeah. I mean, they're unprofessional. They don't know the first thing about relationships. They just do. You could have a whole set of drawings and they just do whatever they want. And it happens to me every single day.
Yeah.
And I'm on them all the time. I have a sub that just, we had this beautiful TNG soffit. And on the back side of the house, he decides to run it a different direction. Didn't ask, didn't do anything, just did it.
Yeah.
And you're going, and then he wants to charge you to tear it down and do it right. And and so I think there needs to be a little more regulation on the general contractor side. It changes the relationship with the subcontractors. And I know that in California, I had a really big following of just prime, perfect, awesome subs that, man, when we talked to them, it was, we listened. And I always use the thing that, I'm a general contractor. I got general knowledge. I count on my subs for specific knowledge.
Right.
And so I had a really great rate of success in California with having those intelligent people in all those trades tell me the information and that they need this, they need that. And then we just had to execute it. We had to organize it and execute it. And it went great when you have that. But when you got guys that don't show up on time, and, they cause you delays.
Yeah.
Perfect example is when you're setting a furnace, you got to set some drywall behind, tape it, fire tape it and whatnot. And, you get a drywall sub like, oh, yeah, I'll be up there, on Friday. Hey, Joey, guy's going to be up on Friday. Great. I'll drive up to McCall on Monday.
Yeah.
And then, you show up and you're like, hey, dude, it ain't done.
Yeah.
That guy, it's infuriating that how much money these guys cost everybody and they don't care.
Yeah.
And so those are my pet peeves in the industry that I could go on with forever. But let's see, what else have we covered?
Well, I was going to say, that happens to us all the time. We'll even get held off by other trades, by the plumbers, electrical, whatever. And, our main claim to fame, we have nothing but 5-star reviews, and half the people I do work for, I become friends with. People that I've done work for, their kids hang out with my kids, spend the night at our house, vice versa. And these people, I've just met them through literally installing their system. But the big thing is that you got to do what you say you're going to do. That's the main thing. My dad raised me that way. I've worked till 12 o'clock at night with lights on inside of an empty house that's being built to get stuff caught up with because I got delayed or because I got backed up to make sure that I'm on my timeline. I work through the weekends, whatever needs to be done. A lot of guys won't do that. They delay, and it just causes a mess, causes a lot of money loss for the companies involved, the GC, the owners, if they're trying to build and flip or whatever it may be. But The big thing I can't harp on enough is on your HVAC system. If you need a new HVAC system or you need a repair, get multiple opinions. Just like if you had to go to the doctor because you had a serious health condition, you don't just take the one doctor's word for it. You're dealing with something that's important and may cost you a lot of time or money. Get multiple quotes, 3, 4, 5 quotes. If something sounds fishy, have somebody else take a look at it, because you're going to save yourself a ton of money and time. And the reality is that getting something for a reasonable price does not mean you lose or lack value or quality. Our installs are top notch. I'm super OCD picky. I mean, I treat people's house like it's my own, literally. I go and pick our own stuff apart all the time and make them redo stuff and everything, which would totally pass. It would be fine. It would pass inspection and everybody would sign off on it, but it's not the way I want it done. So,
well, we're kind of out of time. Really appreciate you coming in. And we just, and we'll leave your information in the comments.
Sure.
And we appreciate everybody, and stay tuned. If there's anything that you guys want or need, questions for Joey or us, just give us a holler in the comments. And if you haven't done so already, like and subscribe, and please share this video with other people. It could be really helpful to somebody building their first home. I know a lot of people come out here and want to do build their owner builder, home and things like that, which is great, but just know that there's a lot of things that you need to be aware of, and some of these videos could really help. So thank you, everybody, and take care.
Thank you.